Hello, hello. I am so excited that you've chosen to join us this morning. This is Melissa and Dixie. We're here to have a really lovely conversation about real life stuff, right? So I want to introduce Dixie quickly to you. I'll be reading her bio, so pardon me while I look up above the computer. But Dixie is a licensed professional counselor candidate. How exciting is that? National certified counselor, Reiki master, media meditation teacher, shamanic practitioner, spiritual guide, and life coach. I love it. My goodness, how many things you do. She counsels clients in Colorado and provides life coaching and her other healing modalities internationally. I love that. Dixie can relate to having a loved one diagnosed with a life-threatening disease. Her daughter was diagnosed with leukemia in 2006. Wow. She has worked with families whose children have been diagnosed with cancer. Her partner was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2017. Wow. So she has a passion to help the families of those who have been diagnosed with a serious disease to help bridge the healing for the one diagnosed and to the families. Wow. That's a huge intention and gift, and really how you want to show up in the world for your people.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate you inviting me to this space. And you're right. The intention really is to give hope. I just want to start this with saying I don't pretend to know what it's like to be diagnosed with MS or cancer, but I do, as a professional counselor and a mother and a partner of either clients who've gone through an illness or going through an illness or diagnosis, and a mother whose daughter was diagnosed with leukemia when she was 2.5, to being with a partner who was diagnosed with MS in 2017. I can understand it from the family perspective side and the professional clinical side of it. So that's where I think I hopefully can give hope for both sides, but understanding it from the family side, if that makes sense. Just going back to 06 very quickly, and I've talked to my partner who was diagnosed with MS, and it's very similar, not the same, but similar for the one diagnosed and the family member or the loved one who, as we know, we've all heard of Kubler-Ross's the 5 stages of grief, which is there's the denial. That denial is on both sides. It's like, what just happened? Like your world is rocked. There's that denial piece and the anger as a mother. I was 4 months pregnant with my son at the time. My daughter was 2.5 when she was diagnosed. So I was very angry. Like, how did this happen to my child? What did I do? And that blame can come in for the one diagnosed and family members. Like, gosh, what could we have done? So there's on both sides, and I say bridge because it really is. My hope is to help the one diagnosed and the loved one at some point come to a place of healing for both. And that realistically can take a long time because someone diagnosed, whether it be MS, cancer, whatever it is, I feel and I've heard they really need their space at first. It's like, because their world has been rocked. It's like, what is this? What is MS? What is leukemia? I didn't know what leukemia was. So of course, the worst thing to do, which I think most people do, is you go online and you look up what is multiple sclerosis. You look up what is leukemia, and it's like, that's like the worst thing to do. And the doctors tell you, don't do that, don't do that. But you want to know.
But we do.
You do. You want an immediate, like, how can I fix this? Right? How can I, what is this and what can I do with it? So as a counselor, I love working with families who have a loved one who is diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, a disease, or coming from a perspective of a partner who has been diagnosed with MS. But as back to a counselor, being able to bring the families together to take a step back and give the person diagnosed space. Even though my daughter was 2.5, she still, you know, her world was
Oh.
changed and she couldn't really verbalize it at that age very well. She's very
Mm-hmm.
verbal at her age. Giving whoever it is, the one diagnosed, space to take it in at first,
Mm-hmm.
take it in. What I
Mm-hmm.
hear a lot um, from families, the family side is, what can I do? What do they need? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can relate to this, Melissa, like what, you know,
Completely.
right. So you know, what it, you know,
Yeah.
if I were to ask if it's okay,
Mhm.
what do you feel you need? What did you need when you were diagnosed? What did you feel, or did you need that space? Some people really push back away
Mhm.
from family, which is understandable. But
Mhm.
I'm curious if you don't mind sharing,
Oh,
what
sure.
what did you need? Like that's a big desire on both sides. Like what can we do to help? So what
Yeah.
did you need? Like from diagnosis to
Mm.
now, that may have changed over
Yeah. So thinking back to, thank you for asking this question. And I don't often go back into that space in my mind because it was so absolutely darkly, freakishly scary.
yeah, yeah,
Because I remember in the appointment where, you know, I'd been poked and prodded for about a year and a half by everybody in the lower Wyoming, northern Colorado
yeah, yeah.
area, trying to figure out what was going on. And
Mm,
I remember walking into that. Um, I felt sure that the doctor had finally come to a conclusion of what he thought it was, right?
right.
And so I could hardly walk. My left side didn't work. So I was hanging on to my husband and onto the wall. And left side didn't work. Right side was not working terribly well either. I should have been in a wheelchair, but I wasn't because I was too stubborn. Um, but when the words "you have multiple sclerosis" came out of his mouth, it's like my world shut off.
Yeah,
I really didn't hear anything else. I mean, he kept talking. You know, I was hearing the
right.
noise, but that was it. Um, and so in that moment, I was just like frozen with fear and literally walking out. I don't remember the ride home. I remember crying, but in the because I chose not to do any medication because I kind of, not really, but sort of knew what it would do to my body, and that scared me even more.
Yeah.
I chose not to do anything. But in the weeks after, I really gave up
Mm,
my life because I felt that it was quite frankly over and the grieving process really started. And I spent nights just crying because of the fact that I didn't think I'd get to see my kids grow up.
no.
And, you know, just gave it all in. Sorry, I didn't mean to get emotional.
Well,
Sorry.
I think it's beautifully
Because
fine. I think that's
it's
important,
like,
actually.
that's what happens. You know, you kind of, when nobody tells you that you might be able to get better, and they tell you that you're going to be um, bedridden by the age of 40, the age of 45, I'm 46, and you know, you'll be lucky to still be alive at the age of 50.
Mm,
You're like, oh my gosh. So grieving the fact that I probably wouldn't get to see any grandkids, maybe not be able to see my boys get married. I've got 3 boys. Um,
oh,
so really just letting go of that and just walking through the process as if I had already died.
gosh.
Um, so when you're asking me what I needed in that time, I needed space. I needed someone to not judge me because of the choices I made, but also someone to, or just space for my uh, you know, my family to understand that because I was quiet and crying all the time and I slept like 18 hours a day, it didn't mean that I didn't want to be with them. It just meant that I needed time.
You needed time.
Yeah.
You need space. And
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for sharing that. No, I
Mm.
can't imagine being told that, and then the fear first, that like you said, the shock, the denial, like you kind of shut down and couldn't hear
Yeah.
your body, your brain will shut down. It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't hear this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you think of your boy, your family, and
Mm-hmm.
all these things thrown at you. You're like, all right, I need
Yep.
space and I need time. And that's what I hear a lot with my clients. And thank you for sharing from your heart. I really think that will help a lot of people know that they're not alone, and know that, okay, it's not just me that feels this, that has that denial, that shock, that maybe, I don't think you mentioned anger, but that's that, like, what do I do with this? Am I going to get to see my boys and grandchildren someday? Am I going to, be here at 50? I mean, that's huge. That's a huge change in life, like all at once. I try to put myself in the shoes of my clients, and I know I can't, but I try to as a counselor, and to understand the shock of it. And then, okay, so you had that blown up in your face, basically. And then you're like, all right, I need time. I need time. And everybody's different. Some people may start off with anger, or some people may start off with action, and then go, like the grief cycle is not linear. It's like a roller coaster, right?
Yep.
Like, okay, so start at different places, but you sharing your heart is so powerful, and I know it's going to help many people. Just know, I think one of the main things is to know you're not alone. And I've heard that, and it makes my heart feel, because when my daughter was diagnosed, this is an example, is you feel like you're the only family that this is happening, or going to have to go through. It's like, no one understands this. Just stay away for a little bit. So I think one of the main things to take from this is to know that you're not alone, and that there is hope and there is help out there. What you are doing, what people who have a good heart and just are wanting to really help and give hope to those who have been diagnosed with MS, or who have been diagnosed whatever the disease or whatever it is. So thank you again for sharing that, because like I said, I'll go back to the grief. There's denial and shock. Again, it's not disorder. There's anger. People can stay. Now people can stay in anger. Understandably, I was angry. I was angry when my daughter was diagnosed. Like, if I could take it from her, I would. And we can't do that, right? You just want, or the family member wants to do all they can, and sometimes it suffocates the one who's diagnosed. It's like, okay, thank you. I know you love me, but I need you to give me some time here. And I've heard that a lot too. And space. And that's, and like you said, Melissa, you said it's not that, and you were sleeping there's depression with that. There's shock with that. So your body is like in shock, literally in shock. So the sleep you needed, you and your body needed, was important. And I'm glad you were able to do that for yourself. And you said, but it's not that I didn't want to be with my family. I needed that. So I think it's actually, you made a really good point, is self-care in this time too, is like doing what you need. And it's not selfish. It's necessary, right? Wouldn't you say? It's
completely
not selfish. It's like, and some people feel that sometimes I've heard clients say, the one who has been diagnosed is like, they want to make sure everybody else is okay, and then they're not taking care of themselves. I don't know if you know.
And sometimes that's one of the root reasons why we get ill, is because that has been our focus. And there's nothing, good, better otherwise. It's just how we are. I mean, some of us are sewed up that way, if you want to say it that way. And when we get to the place of diagnosis and our body is just crying loud for rest and for us to really listen and hear. And sometimes it's like, we think about symptoms as being just this terrible thing, and we want to manage them. And I don't want to say that with like a harshness of any kind, because our symptoms are literally our body crying out for help. Like, hey, I have taken care of this problem, what is causing this symptom, as long as I can. I need help. And sometimes we fight against that, and we're like so mad at ourselves and at our bodies for exhibiting the symptom, when really it's an absolute cry for help. And I think at least for me, when I was in that situation and I didn't know what I know now, right?
Right.
It felt so, I felt so helpless. I didn't know why this was happening. I didn't know what to do to fix it. But when we move into that space and like our bodies are crying for, like me, crying for sleep, I did not
Yeah.
know that that's one of the most healing things that I could do for myself at that time. But your body leads you into what you need. And, you know, just to kind of help get through everything. So I love that we're talking about kind of the steps and the things that are happening, but from my world, really looking for the root cause of what is driving this for us, whether it's a precious little who is 2.5, or, you know, somebody like me that was 33, our bodies know what they need.
Yeah.
And if you can hear anything from our chat today, is to not feel like you're alone and not feel like you are being selfish in giving your body what it needs in the moment.
I love that. Thank you. That's incredibly powerful. What you just said is not so knowing you're not alone and giving your body what it needs, which is not selfish. I love that. And in our culture, and it's not that way throughout the world, and I know this could be for anyone around the world. In Western culture, we are taught to go, 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 and so our bodies are like, no, I'm gonna get your attention. You know, is what you're saying is like in some way. And if we listen to our bodies like you did, it's like, I'm going to rest. This is what I need. And speaking of needs, when I do communication with family members or even individual clients as well, I use an acronym and I use it often, but I think it can be very beneficial to help with the communication. And again, it is so important for people to understand that everybody's on their own path. It's not going to be linear. Okay, we're going to do this day. That's just not realistic, as you know.
Right.
But when both, and I don't like to say sides because I don't want to separate family from the one diagnosed. I want them to bridge together. But just for lack of better words, the one diagnosed and the loved ones, when they're out of space or they've had the one diagnosed and the family member has had some time to process the diagnosis at some point, when it's a little bit more balanced after you've had time to rest and process it, I like to have families communicate, because a lot of times what can happen is if that communication piece, you know, if they could push each side further apart, and that's not what we want. You know, your family loves you and they want to help, but you need the space. So it's coming back to, okay, how do we work to get back to unity, if that makes sense? And what I use with my clients and families sometimes, excuse me, it's called Fanos, which is, you know, some people have them write down vertically. It's Fanos, it's Fanos. And the F is for feelings. And this is for the one diagnosed to be able to say, when they're ready, I feel. And the family listens. They don't interrupt. They listen. I feel. And whatever you're feeling, then I acknowledge the A in Fanos. I acknowledge, I acknowledge that maybe they've been doing all this research and throwing books at you and all this stuff, you know, and you acknowledge that they are trying and they love you, so that they hear that you see that, but that's really maybe not what you need right then, right? The N is probably the biggest, well, one of the biggest need. I need. F-A-N. The N is huge. I need. The one diagnosis gets to say, this is what I need from you guys, to the family. The O is I own. And this is no blame. I don't want anyone to hear this. This is not blame, but it's I own. Maybe someone has been distant because they needed that, right? But letting the family know, I own that maybe I've been snappy. Maybe I've stayed away longer than you like, but that's still okay. But you're owning that, so they hear you. That's connected together. F-A-N-O. excuse me, S is huge, as we have already talked about,
Mm-hmm.
which is self-care. What are you, myself, or what you need for self-care? My self-care is whatever it is that you need. In your case, it was, I'm going, my self-care is I'm going to sleep 18 hours a day. Okay. And that's part of the need too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once the person who has been diagnosed is done speaking and the family listens, then the family gets a turn to do the same thing. So they feel heard too.
Mm-hmm.
I feel something, whatever that is. I acknowledge, I need, I own. Maybe they've been suffocating you unintentionally. I own
Yep.
that I'm trying to sin and do, and I'm going to fix this, all
Yep.
those things. And their self-care, what is theirs? And that seems
Mm.
to depending on where the person in the family is and when they've been diagnosed. And I say they because it's not just the one diagnosed, it's a family, as you probably, and I don't want
Yeah.
to put words in your mouth, but I would guess that your family has been through this with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's definitely not your fault. I repeat that because it's no one's fault,
Right. Yeah.
but it's a family diagnosis.
It is.
Yeah. So Fanos can help bridge that, which happens a lot, that gap that happens for a while because they don't know what to do. And the one diagnosed usually needs space. So there's
Yeah.
this kind of separation when it's so hard for both sides because all they want and all you is to heal and help. But that's not what usually happens at first. It's like people need time. And again, it could be months, it could be years. It depends.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the person. So I
Yeah.
like to use Thanos to help bridging everyone back together. And that could be done. And it depends on the family, the family and the way diagnosis. Okay, maybe we do this once a week. And if that's too much, maybe we do it twice a month. But it's kind of I'm careful to use the word check-in because some people cringe at that, but it's kind of just checking in with where you are, because if there's no communication, that's not good. And as a
Yeah.
counselor, and you don't have to be a counselor to know this, the top things that for trouble is like communication is one of the top. If there's not communication, that's not good. So we want to help keep that unity even stronger. And I really have seen that happen from my family. At first it was everybody was everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And but then with the communication piece, and we got to know the doctors and the nurses, and they became family, and it just and just different people who came into our lives to help and give hope.
Yeah.
Kind of unified the family more, if you will. So I've talked so much. Do you have any questions or anything about this so far?
I love this. And I would love to have your permission to share Thanos. I was just making some quick notes here to share Thanos with with everybody who sees and hears this.
Absolutely.
I'll put this in the little blurb on YouTube when I share it to our community. And I love how simple this is because I'm going back to my own journey of diagnosis. And when just kind of giving a little bit of perspective from the one who was diagnosed, I don't remember so much of that first year after my diagnosis. I don't remember much of it. I don't remember much of, what happened with the kids. I don't remember much about anything.
Yeah.
And so remembering, the kids will tell a story or I'll say something that happened and I'll be like,
you're like,
I was there, but I don't remember.
Right.
But I think if we would have had this kind of communication, because I was there to cook meals and keep the house going and all the stuff and drive them to where they needed to go. But I was checked out, seriously checked out emotionally, because I was trying to process all of this for myself. And if I would have had this kind of a tool, I know it's so simple, but to have this kind of a tool, it would have majorly changed how I walked through this, but how my kids walked through it and how my husband at the time walked through it. Because as a kind of as an aftermath, because there was no communication, because I checked out, because I was so sick and there were other things involved, ended up that my marriage crashed because of that. Not big only, but that was a big piece of it. And I think a lot of it was I didn't have the strength or the know-how to walk through this with a communication piece.
Right.
And it would have really, really helped my kids, I think. So for you that are listening, if you're the one that has been diagnosed, or if you've got a precious person in your family who has been diagnosed, if you can use this simple Fanos, or find someone who can help you, somebody like Dixie who understands both sides of the table, to really help you and your family create a bridge so there isn't this kind of chasm. I mean, really, let's see, I'm 46. I was diagnosed when I was 33. It wasn't till last year that, and my boys don't really, they're not good at talking about feelings and whatnot. And
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. But we've had a few of those little bitty, 2-3 sentence conversations that were like monumentous.
Yes.
And it's taken that long for them to be able to talk a little bit about that, because when your mom checks out, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So if you're in that space and you're feeling stuck, please reach out. If you're in Colorado, I'm sure you have to be careful with, whatever license stuff for you. But, reach out to Dixie, because this is such a big deal. This is a huge piece of not just your recovery, but the fluidity and connection in your family. So, because it's not just you, it's everybody in the family that's being affected. And to be honest, I feel like my healing journey would have been a lot different if we would have had some of these tools in place for me and my family. So as you're listening and you're leaning into this and it's making sense and it's starting to resonate inside, don't be afraid to reach out. Reach out to me, reach out to Dixie. We may have connections in your state if one of us can't serve you in the way that you need. But please reach out, because I don't want you to stay stuck.
Right.
I think that was one of the most terrible things for me, was the stuck feeling. Like, I don't know how to get out. I don't know how to change this.
That had to be that. I hear that a lot, Melissa, is you just almost feel paralyzed by fear.
That's
And
the word, paralyzed.
Yeah. It's like this is dropped on you, and then you're a mother, and it's so much. So like you were saying, for the first year, you're kind of, it sounds like autopilot, which is very normal. I want to normalize that, because you are in survival mode,
Literally,
physically and mentally. Literally, you're in survival mode physically, but also mentally, emotionally. You're just, how, if you don't mind me asking, how old were your boys when you were diagnosed? They had to be little.
Yeah, they were pretty young. So
Yeah.
right now I suck at math.
I do too. Don't worry. Approximately.
So my oldest
So
was
there you go.
probably 10, 11, 12, somewhere
Okay.
in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that process, like what kind of initiated the whole trying to figure out what was going on was I had like a stroke-like incident, and where, something popped in my head, and I like crumped to the floor like a rag doll. I could hear. I couldn't like talk. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move. So essentially the kids they thought mom just died. They were little, and we didn't have cell phones. And so it was just like, so they had that trauma on top of it. Where was I going with this story?
I was just
I
wondering.
lost my train.
Yeah. No, well, I was asking kind of like how old they were, because you had said something a minute ago about the feelings part. And I was just thinking of their age then versus being able to use Thanos now with their age. Like, boy, I have a son too. I have a son and a daughter, but my son, tend to not express their feelings. That it's not,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to generalize, but
Yeah.
I've seen the difference in that. So my point is, they may have a harder time expressing their feelings. That's why I was
Mm-hmm.
asking, how old were they then, and how
Yeah.
are they now? So they may, and it may just be little
Mm-hmm.
short things because your mom, you're
Mm-hmm.
their superhero, and you always will be. That's how they see you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So being able to say, I feel like, if there's a
Yeah.
time where you can sit with them, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know your children, it's different for everyone. My son
Yeah.
would be like, all right, I feel this, mom, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
But he's a big heart. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess I was asking that because I'm wondering if they're old enough now to maybe express that a little bit differently than they
I think
obviously than they would
so.
when they were younger. They may not have.
Yeah.
So age is important. Like if they were 2, 3, 4, they may have just said, I feel scared. I saw mommy
Mm-hmm.
do this. But if they're teens, still it may be very short,
Mm-hmm.
but they still have the opportunity to tell their
Speak
mother,
it.
right? Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really, really important. And I'm glad you brought that up earlier. You had mentioned age, and like that's really important to point out because people will
Mm-hmm.
express differently, obviously, when they're little versus when they're older, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So I'm not, I don't know because they were, my oldest was preteen and he
okay.
kind of had become the man of the house, literally, and do a lot of things for me and help me. The younger kids, two younger ones, I think they felt it, but they didn't really understand it so
Yeah.
much. But my oldest, it kind of fell on his shoulders and he didn't get to be a kid after that. He kind of had to grow up.
But you guys have had some
Mhm.
conversations about it, which is
Yeah.
good and important. That's the point of that is to
Mhm.
be able to communicate that,
Yeah.
as they're ready. If we push them, it's not going to
Mhm.
work. And I want to point that out at any age. Like
Mhm.
if there's a family member who is not ready or they're scared to even
Mhm.
express how they feel, and this is a big one, I feel like I
Mhm.
was going to lose you. Some people cannot say that because
Yeah.
it's so, you've expressed that it's so scary, both
Mhm.
sides, right? Sides.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
even verbalize that is,
Mhm.
some people actually can't do it, and that's something
Mhm.
for the audience to be aware of. It's not that they don't
Mhm.
care and they don't love, they really are stuck in that fear, like I can't
Mhm.
even go there yet, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Like you had said earlier, like reaching out to you, or if it's
Mhm.
Colorado Counseling here, or whoever, wherever they are
Yeah.
in the world, if they're
Yeah.
having a hard time expressing their feelings,
Mhm.
it's really important that they talk to someone, because if
Yeah.
it's stuck in there, it will get stuck in there for
Mhm.
years if it's not
Yeah.
expressed. I think that's so important to let the audience know that. And it's
Yeah.
okay to do at their own pace. It's
Exactly.
okay.
When
Yeah.
you're ready.
When you're ready, because in
Mhm.
counseling or not, you don't want to force that, because
Yeah.
it's not going to work that way.
Yeah. So giving yourself grace. That's kind of what I'm hearing is giving yourself
Yes.
grace to walk through the parts and pieces that you need to. And sometimes it's easier to express something like that to a safe party, like a counselor or a practitioner, or, somebody in your world that you feel really safe with, be able to talk that through.
Absolutely.
And before you speak that to, the person that you're wanting to relate to.
Right. That's actually a really good point, Melissa. Is some people do that. They'll talk to a practitioner or a counselor or coach or someone
Mm-hmm.
because they're too afraid, or they're scared they're going to say it wrong and do whatever to their loved ones. So
Mm-hmm.
talking to someone and going over that, even role playing,
Yeah.
is it can be really helpful for people who
Mm-hmm.
are really stuck in that fear of
Yeah.
being able to say, I was so scared that I was going to
Yeah.
lose you. I mean, that's really hard to say. So
Yeah.
yeah, communication. I was looking at a note that so love, communication, and action. So when talking with someone diagnosed in the family, love, and this could take a long time, but love of self is not
Mm.
egotistical. I think it's crucial,
Yeah.
to the healing process, to be able to love self, and the
Mm-hmm.
family, have a family love unit,
Mm-hmm.
push that together. We've
Mm-hmm.
talked about the communication piece, and then
Yeah.
there's the action piece. So
Mm.
the action piece, I'm curious, how were you able to move forward? Like what was an action that helped you? Like, okay,
Ooh,
and that may have taken a long time, but
yeah,
because the action piece is huge to not feel it, stay in that stuck space, right?
exactly.
So if you don't mind, like, what was it
Yeah.
that may help others? Like, oh, and when they're ready to maybe
Mm-hmm.
take this action step or
Mm-hmm.
something similar.
Yeah. So one of my traits with fear is to be paralyzed. I mean, even like dumb little things like I'm relearning to ski because now my body
Oh,
works.
awesome. That's so cool.
And
Well,
so
awesome.
I'm
That sounds
learning
fun.
again. And
That's awesome, Melissa.
it's like my left side works now.
Awesome.
And so it was just this weekend looking down the slope, going,
That's,
so
yeah.
my body freezes. So freeze for me is a thing. But thinking about how to move, like what was the action step? I was kind of pushed into this,
Okay.
into the action because we had moved to a new city. I hadn't done a thing, right? We moved, not new city, but a new area here in Montana. And I was actually referred to a practitioner by a friend of mine for a completely different situation that I was experiencing. And, I didn't know, I was going for, a neck and back injury
Right.
to a
Right.
chiropractor. And he was working on that. We were getting that all straightened around. He's like, how about if we work on the rest of your body? And I was like, okay,
Okay.
great, whatever, you know? And so I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? It's not going to hurt anything. So, he started giving me steps and different things to do, starting with food and then looking at the whole body, kind of what I do for other people now.
Yes.
But it's
Yes.
like I just kind of fell into it. We don't ever fall into anything.
Right.
But
I
it
agree. I
was
agree.
like the impetus just kind of was so natural and the progression was so natural that I didn't even really see it coming until it started happening. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And my body was starting to wake up and I started to think that maybe I could get better.
Wow.
And then my body started to change and we could talk about the steps of what the healing is. And then when you really get better and your body is like working normally again, it's the whole absolute fear of how do I stay here?
Mm,
But
okay.
that's another story. But really leaning into that, the first step, that action step was, a referral from a friend and me going to have the, sessions with this very, very gifted practitioner. I still tell him, I said, I blame you that I can walk. And he's like, oh, I'll take it.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. So you listen. There was like a nudge, like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I'm here for something else, but all right, I took the action
Yeah,
step here. Why not? Let's see. And
yeah.
then look where you are now, what you're doing and who you're
Isn't it
being.
crazy?
It's beautiful, the people you're helping truly and who you are. So I just want to say thank you for who you're being. That
Thank you.
that had to be your welcome. That had to be an incredibly, like you said, scary, to say it lightly, fearful, all these journey.
Yeah,
But the hope is, look where you are now, and you're
yeah.
skiing and you're doing the things you love, is what it sounds like. You're
Trying to ski.
trying to ski, but your action, that action
Mhm.
a while back
Mhm.
led you to where you are now. So having, when the person is ready,
Yeah.
and it could take years. It's okay.
Mhm.
People need to. Some people feel like they have to give, someone else has to give them permission, and they don't. It's their own permission, right?
Thank
It's
you
their
for
own
saying that.
permission. Because I hear it a
Yes.
lot in counseling. It's like, you don't need my permission. It's
Mhm.
you, the client or whoever it is,
Mhm.
to trust that little nudge. It could be
Mhm.
a little voice like, oh, just try this, read this book,
Yep.
talk to this practitioner, talk to this
Mhm.
counselor, talk to this coach, try
Mhm.
this food, whatever it is, try,
Mm.
this supplement, whatever it is,
Yes.
to trust self through this. And I heard you say I freeze, like the fear of,
Mhm.
fight, flight, and there is freeze, and freeze is
Mhm.
really big when someone is being diagnosed, because you don't know what to do
Mhm.
at first, but the hope and the reality is you right here.
Mhm.
Is,
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
can and does get better. It's taking those little steps and
Mm-hmm.
trusting yourself and
Yes.
giving yourself the love and space and
Mm.
rest or whatever it is. I've talked to clients with different illnesses that they want to get away from the
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis for a little bit, because especially when it's a new
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis, so
It's heavy.
it's so heavy. Yeah, so not at first, like I would say not at first, I wouldn't suggest this, but maybe, and I'd like your opinion on this, is finding something you now at first you're not, your world is not even a thing, maybe not even first year or two, but finding a hobby or something you love.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something you used to do before the diagnosis, that you, if it's writing, if it's
Yep.
singing, if it's playing an instrument,
Mm-hmm.
that I have witnessed some of my clients that actually helps them, because it's not staying so
Mm-hmm.
focused on the diagnosis.
Yes.
Uh, does
Mm.
that resonate with you? Is that,
Majorly.
yeah,
Giving yourself a place to go in your mind, and maybe even actually for a
yeah,
minute, into a place that is not touched by your diagnosis.
right. You said it beautifully. Exactly that. And it could be whatever that is. It could be, like Denise said, just for a minute. It doesn't have to be a long day thing. It could be just a minute or two, just getting
Mhm.
away from it. And it's not an escape or a numbing. It's an actual healthy thing,
Yeah.
whatever that
Oh,
is for the person.
I could go into the whole HPTG axis, hormone cascade, what's happening there, why that 5 minutes is like a breath of fresh air or a drink of cool water for your body,
Oh,
literally.
wow.
But it's
Oh,
really important.
what do you mind? I know it's probably what, just a glimpse, like a ding, a little
A
snippet.
ding. Okay, here's the ding.
Yeah, here's the ding.
So when we are constantly in the, and I use my hands like this on purpose, it's almost
Okay.
like we become wrapped up in being in this diagnosis and experiencing it, and it sort of takes over our life.
Yeah.
But what is happening on in the hormone cascade, which starts in the pituitary deep inside your head here, that's your master gland, literally. And your perception of what's happening in your world is exactly how it will be translated in your hormone cascade. So
Okay.
if you feel like you're in danger, if you feel like you're kind of in that fight, flight, freeze all the time, your body is creating hormones to support what it feels is your danger zone.
Right.
And that's why sometimes after people actually get a diagnosis and they do the midnight Dr. Google with your favorite brew ritual, and you're scared half out of your mind, your body is translating that. And those hormones are then translating into what happens in the body. Our hormones run our body. So when we give ourselves that moment, even if it's 5 minutes, deep breathing, sitting
Mm-hmm.
with your favorite song, playing the piano, drawing, maybe it's just laying in the sun with your eyes shut with nothing,
Right.
quiet.
Yes.
Maybe it's a punching bag in the garage, I don't know.
Yeah.
But creating a space for that perception to go, you know what? Okay, I get it. All this other stuff is here. Right now, I am in a space of actual peace and rest, and
Mm.
letting joy rise up, letting that be just a moment where the world becomes light again. That changes your hormone cascade. And the more you
Right.
can do that, it creates actual change in your cellular structure. And that actually is a piece of healing.
Mm, that's
Does that
beautiful.
make sense?
Oh my gosh, yes. I love how you said that. Peace and joy. And you're describing the grounding, being still,
Mm-hmm.
giving yourself space. And I love how you said
Just a
just sitting in the
moment.
sun with your eyes closed. Some
Mm-hmm.
people, I've suggested taking their, now I know it's snowy and you're in Montana, it's a little chilly, but especially in the summertime, taking your socks off, walking in the grass, grounding yourself, it feels so good, or being by the water.
Oh, I love
Yes, it
water.
makes I do too. I think it's incredibly healing. So I love
Mhm.
what you said, Melissa. I think that and breath work. I mean,
Mhm.
breath work is
Oh,
huge.
it's huge.
You're describing being
Mm.
present, like
Mhm.
being
In the
still.
moment.
Yes. And that, even work with on a side like clients with anxiety, taking a few breaths tells your brain you are safe. It is okay.
Mhm.
So yes, I absolutely
Measured breathing. Mm.
yes, I absolutely love it. I love that you thank you
Mhm.
for giving us a snippet of that, because I think if
Mhm.
people can take that away from this, if nothing else, that is huge,
Yeah.
because you're giving you're taking care. That's self-care. That's
Yeah.
self-care, which
But
is huge.
it literally gives your body a moment of healing.
Yes, and that's what we're wanting, is the healing, hope
Mhm.
and healing,
Mhm. Yeah.
which you just described. So
I
thank
love
you.
it. Oh,
Wow.
I love this conversation. We might
I
have to do
do.
more of these. Oh
Oh, I'd
my
love
goodness.
to. I'd love to.
Because
This was
this
awesome.
is huge. This is
Yes.
huge, you guys. And it's not, and I love that you're coming from the perspective of professional working with folks who are walking through this journey,
Right.
but also personally a mom and a partner, and really understanding that piece. Whereas I get to share as a mom, but also as a professional, but then as the one who was diagnosed. So we can kind
Right.
of mirror and kind of walk
Yes.
through this for all of you who are listening, that this is not some foo-foo, I hope this works pretty, it looks good on paper. No, this
No.
is real life. This is how it actually happens. And really giving you a space, I hope and pray, to be able to know that you're not alone. And there is a space for you to become well.
Mm.
And that starts here. And it starts here. So many times we think that it starts in the body. And for some people, that's the most logical place because that's where their brain is. And for me, that was where I had to start, was the body, because just that's how my brain works. That's probably why I'm a functional medicine practitioner. That's how my brain works. But it's really wherever you want to begin, when you're ready to begin, and giving yourself grace to let yourself reach that naturally and hear your inner wisdom, and leaning in and really trusting that. And I talk about this with people who are wanting to come on and work with our team. Is That's one of the reasons why we do the initial call is always free, because I want their inner wisdom and their inner connection to be like, yes, this is what I've been looking for. And if it's not, we bless them and send them on to whoever, is in the next, state for them to be able to, not literal state, but the next step that they could potentially be working into. So I want you to just trust your body, trust your intuition, trust what's in here. Lean into that.
Mm.
What would you like to share, kind of to wrap this up for everyone?
You said that so beautifully. I love that you went to the heart, and I meant to mention that, and you did it. And thank you for the reminder for everybody, because it really is tapping into your deeper self. Yes, we are logical and think,
Yeah,
a lot of us start there, but tapping into our deeper self,
right
our
here.
heart.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what we need to listen to and love ourselves. And you said it a few times, which I think is beautiful, is giving yourself grace and your own permission. Nobody else needs to give anyone permission to do what is best for you,
Mhm.
and to know you're not alone through this process. Um, thank you. Thank you for, it's an
Mm.
honor to be with you, Melissa. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you for joining us,
Yeah, this is great. This was
sharing your
awesome.
wisdom and your brilliance. I
You as
love it.
well. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you to everyone. You've taken time out of your day to join us and to really listen. Thank you. And our our hope and our prayer and our intention before we even started this conversation was that you would get a little bit of an opening of hope, right? A little bit of an opening of, oh, what if? What if I could be well? Lean into that. Oh, may your day be amazing, and we'll talk soon.